Welcome to the lowdown.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the lowdown. Got a great show for you tonight. Got an in-studio guest who have had some amazing encounters. But before we get into that, if you had an encounter that you'd like to share and you'd like to come on the show, send me an email at the lowdownpodcast411@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your stories, and I know that the listeners would love it as well. Also, go over to YouTube, subscribe, follow on your favorite podcast platform, like, share, comment, leave a review, all of that good stuff. I would really appreciate it, and it really helps out the show. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the reason why y'all are all here tonight. I've got Adam Pierce in the studio, and Adam has had a lot of wild encounters. Adam grew up in South Florida. Later on in life, he moved up to the Northwoods of Wisconsin, currently lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. But when he was living in Wisconsin, he had some encounters that were unexpected. Now, he didn't go out looking for anything, but something found him. Let's get into it. I hear this thing crashing through the trees, and it got closer and closer and closer, and then all of a sudden everything just went quiet, like I was being watched. Adam, what's up, brother? Welcome to the lowdown, man.
Oh, how's it going? Thank you for having me on. It's going pretty good.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing good as well. So, yeah, man, we got hooked up. I think we were in the same Facebook group together, one of those Bigfoot Facebook groups, and you commented on one of my posts, and you were like, "Hey, man, I follow you on TikTok," and and you told me that you have a podcast too, Entering the Unknown podcast, which, by the way, I love what y'all are doing over there, man. It's great stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, you were like, "Hey, man, I got a podcast. I'd be willing to come on your show. You can come on my show." And honestly, dude, I appreciate that because, sometimes when you're getting started like this, you're trying to make some contacts. You're trying to kind of get yourself out there. And you were the first one. You were the first one to reach out to me from another show and kind of help me out. So I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I know exactly what you're talking about, how, the started off and everything. And we kind of went over that like the last few days it's kind of difficult because you could schedule people up, and it happened to me so many times. I would have so many more interviews on our show, but it would lead up to it's time to get started. I tried to contact the people, and boom, they're not answering or anything like that. And that's one thing I would never do to people. I make a promise, I'm coming on.
Yeah, man.
So, yeah, I like working with other channels. I feel like the more we work together, the better it is. If we all come together as a group and instead of trying to be that one person who's just all about themselves and, oh man, it's all about me, and if I didn't say it, it never happened, things like that. But I don't want to be like that. I want to work with other creators, other podcasts, other groups, accounts, and everything like that, and come together as a whole, because it just brings more validation to it when we're all doing it together.
Yeah.
And when it comes to subjects like these, because, man, I was a huge skeptic in the subject of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them. And throughout my whole life, I was always a huge skeptic. I would give people so much ridicule and grief over it and make fun of them, toss out the jokes and all that. And I don't know what happened, but it must have been fate or something like that one night that totally kicked me right in the butt.
So, all right. So if you were a big skeptic like that, then I mean, you've got this podcast, Entering the Unknown. Y'all deal with all the same shit that I'm dealing with here. We're talking about Bigfoot and other cryptids, aliens, UFOs, paranormal stuff, maybe
Yep.
a conspiracy theory or two. But yet you were so I mean, how did you what changed? What happened that got you in this weird space?
Okay, so I'm going to go back. This is going to be the second time I go through the whole story, and I'm glad you're letting me do this because I've been on another podcast, Sasquatch Unredacted, and they're more geared to the Bigfoot. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so there was other things I left out, but I briefly went over it with it. They're really great guys with Richard and Johnny over there. Great friends of our show, you know. Um, so I was only talking about the Bigfoot aspect of that, but to go back to the beginning, I was always a believer in the paranormal. You
Mm-hmm.
know, absolutely had no doubt that existed. You know, with a couple things that happened to me from an early age all the way up to now, which we're going to be getting into. Um, when it comes to things like UFOs and ETs and things like that, I I was never really closed-minded on that. I mean, just look how vast the universe and the galaxies and everything else is. We cannot be the only living thing out there, you
Right.
know? So I did have a belief into that, you know, and it's a possibility, you know? I'm just not going to be closed-minded to that subject. But Bigfoot, nope, it would be, I have to believe it to see it. Now, to give you a brief introduction about myself, I'm a born and raised Floridian. I'd also like to add this in there, you know, because this, I think it's going to be key into the future when I get into other things. I am a U.S. Navy veteran. I served my time in the United States Navy. Awesome time. No regrets. I loved it. um, I'm a huge outdoors person. I love to fish, hunt, you know, hike, camp. So of course, being a Floridian, I grew up on the water. So we were always fishing out in the ocean, boats, inshore, offshore. Loved to surf when I was growing up. May not look like it now, but man, I was in a lot better shape. I used to love skateboarding and all that. So I was born in Titusville, Florida. My mom and my dad got divorced at a very young age, right around 1.5 years old. My mom moved us down to Port St. Lucie, Florida. Now, she grew up in St. Lucie County, so this isn't a new area to her. She went to school and stuff there at Fort Pierce Central. Later on, that's exactly where I graduated from the same school she did, so that's pretty cool. So grew up there all my life. The only time I moved away from there was the time I did in the Navy, and maybe a year when I moved up north to, you know, go stay with my uncle and my grandparents when I was 19 years old. Other than that, St. Lucie County, that was my home. So, of course, if you know the area, you know, it's, you know, by the Indian River, and right after that's the ocean on the other side. Not much woods around the area where I grew up, so I never really gave much thought into the subject of Bigfoot. Other than, you know, the Patterson Gimlin film, I did see that at an early age. I thought, okay, if this thing exists, it existed a long time ago. There was only one of them, and it's all the way across in California. There's no way there's something like that here in Florida. So I was never really a believer in that. Now, the paranormal, I always believed into that subject, and I'll get into that because from an early age on, UFOs, ETs, um, of course, I grew up going to church and stuff like that, but as I got older, you know, my mind starts opening up more, and just look how vast space is. We can't be the only things out here, you know, just on this one single planet out of all the billions and trillions of planets out there, star systems, everything, you know. No way we're the only living things, you know. So I always had an open mind to that. Just the Bigfoot thing, huge skeptic. I used to give people so much ridicule, everything, used to joke on them, in which come to now, I hugely regret that. And you'll hear why later. So from the age of 12, my uncle passed away in Gainesville, Florida, and my dad brought me back to my mom's. We're getting ready to go up to Georgia and go to the funeral and everything. So one night I'm laying in my bed, and, I don't care who you are. If you see a light shining when your eyes are closed, you're going to wake up and you're going to see what it is. That's exactly what happened. In the middle of my room was this, like, bright, shining light, And as I woke up, I hear my name, Hey, Adam, don't be afraid. And as I'm looking at it, I hear it again. Don't be afraid. I was like, oh shit. I tear ass across the house to my mom's room. I'm starting to bang on the door because I'm freaked out. Even though, yeah, when you're 12 years old, 12 going into a teenager, you think you're the man at that age, nothing's going to scare you, but this did. I'm banging on my mom's door. She wakes up. What is it? I was like, Mom, I think Uncle Lee's in my bedroom. And she goes, no, Adam, he just passed away. It's on your mind. You're just thinking about that. You just had a bad dream. You had a nightmare. That's all it is. I was like, no, Mom, there's a light in my room and it's talking to me. It knows my name, tells me not to be afraid. She goes, just go back to sleep, and, everything will be all good. I did not go back into my room. I was freaked out. I didn't know what to think about this. The thing about that is, when my dad came and picked me up, I told him, look, Dad, I seen something, and I think it was Uncle Lee. He was in my room. I seen this bright light, knew my name, told me not to be afraid. As I'm telling him this, he was like, I'm taking you over to your aunt's house right now. That same night, something happened to her as well, where she woke up and she's, thinking she's having a conversation with her brother as well. So we go over there and I say what happened, and everybody's like pale white in the face. Like they're shocked. They're like, oh my God, what's happening? And so that's like one of my earliest memories of that, of something that would be paranormal. And before I start getting into other things, I don't want people, and I want to make this clear. The paranormal, UFOs and ETs, and cryptids, I keep them all in their own separate category. I don't think they have anything to do with each other or linked in a way, but if anything, maybe paranormal and, the extraterrestrial could in some way, but I like to keep them all in their own subject, and that's just me. And anybody's entitled to believe how they want to believe when they come into these subjects. I'm not going to tell someone whether they're right or wrong, because who's to say I'm right and they're not, or they're right and I'm wrong, So, as I get older and everything like that, maybe if you walk into a house, you might get that eerie feeling. Your hair stands up. You feel like something's watching you. I had some things like that happen. And you should always listen to those senses, because there's a reason why your body's reacting to things like this. 2016, I meet my wife. I went through a divorce and everything, and I meet my wife I'm with now. We decided a year later in 2017, as the prices start rising in Florida with the cost of living, rent, and everything else, it's starting to go up to where it's less affordable for us to live and everything like that. So her family was like, well, why don't you come back home? Because she's from Wisconsin. You could come up here. It's cheaper to live. Everything like that. And and this is before we got married. She goes, would you like to come with me? I said, yes. I love this woman. I love my wife to death. As far as east and west stretches, my love for her is endless. So glad I met her. So as we moved up to Wisconsin, let me backtrack before this. When I was out of the military, and this was before I met my wife, I had something weird happen in this apartment. And I'm further looking into this because it's associated with sleep paralysis. And the whole thing about that, I don't know what to think about that. Like your eyes are open, but your brain's like in this dream state still, but you're hallucinating. But what was weird about this was in this apartment, I had this happen to me for a whole week straight, to where I would see three smaller things. I would wake up and it would be like three smaller shadow looking figures, like two by the door, and also had a sliding glass door that led out to this patio area. And there would be one over there, or it'd be like one by the door, one in the middle of the bed, one over by the sliding glass door, but there was always three in there. Finally, around to like the sixth night, it happens again. And I'm waking up every night of this thing happening. But the difference was, this time there was something bigger in my room. Now, I don't know if it was the Hat Man, what people are talking about, but it did kind of look like it had something more on its head. It was taller than the other three. As I wake up, I could actually feel my bed like pushing down. And it's coming more over on top of me. I go to scream, I go to yell, nothing's coming out. And as it got closer, I just remember it all going black. Eventually, I wake up, I'm freaking out. It's like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I call up my dad. I'm freaking out. I was like, you need to get over here. Something's going on. I don't know what this is. He came over. He reassured me nothing's going on, things like that. But I was a little freaked out about going back in this bedroom. Eventually I did. Things like that. Give it a little bit of time for that to wear off, the shock of it. Come to find out, after I moved out of this apartment, there was also an Army veteran that moved into the same apartment. And I don't know if any of this is related, but the cops showed up there one time. This guy barricaded himself in. He was freaking out in the same apartment. So I don't know what exactly happened to this guy other than what I read in the news. I always just found that very strange as well. And I'm going to further look into this more because it just fascinates me with the sleep paralysis and the theories that are coming out with it, So now as we go on I'm with my wife, we're moving up to Wisconsin. My father-in-law got us his house. He put the down payment on it, for us to move in. We get up here. We get all moved in. It's probably about the second or third night. I wake up and I hear 3 knocks on the glass part of the door. I wake up, I'm like, okay, I heard that. Now it is raining this night. But about a minute later, I hear knock, knock, knock on the glass. And I could see from my bedroom out towards the kitchen and everything, there's, towards the patio area, I could see out there. And I don't know if it's coming from like around the front door or that part, or maybe even a window. I don't see anything in the door or anything like that. I was like, okay, I know I heard this. And I'm starting to move around. My wife wakes up. She's like, what's going on? I said, I'm hearing somebody knock on the door. I was like, is any of your family members coming by? Your dad? Anybody? She goes, no, why would anybody come over this late at night, Adam? They know we're asleep. I was like, no, you're right. She goes, you're probably hearing rain hit like the, what are those things on in the ceiling? The moonlights or whatever like that. You can see in older Florida homes. We have one of those in our bathroom. She goes, you're probably hearing rain hit that. I was like, no, these are knocks. I know these are knocks. I grew up in Florida. It rains all the time. I know what rain sounds like when it's hitting windows or one of those things. I was like, it's not what it is. She goes, just go back to sleep. But I'm freaked out. I put my rifle next to me. I put my pistol next to me. If anything comes into our house, I see it coming down this hallway, man, I'm going to open up on it. I'm going to unload on them. Bad news. You got into the wrong house. I'm sorry to break it to you, buddy. But, I did hear it again. And I'm like, what the hell? And I know my wife heard it this time. She's like, she's just trying to tell me it's just rain. I was like, whatever. I didn't go back to sleep that night. I just kind of laid there and I probably did in and out of it, but I just never went fully back to sleep. The thing about this house is after that, I always got like these weird feelings inside there. And there was parts of the house that was like, I looked up the house. It was built in 1994, but it was never really finished. Like the downstairs area, the bathroom was never finished down there, and they were trying to add on to it. The paneling up top on the walls and the ceiling, there was things missing from there, and I always found that a little strange. But I would always feel like something was watching me. Like you get that really eerie feeling, like you just always had eyes right here. Whether you go outside at night, and I would bring my pistol out with me. Now, I don't know if this was me just being paranoid at first because I'm used to living in bigger areas, houses right next to each other. I'm not used to living out here in the woods. So I don't know if any of this has any play in it. So, but I always kept it in mind, like just be observant to it. We would hear things running around downstairs in the house I showed you. I don't know if you could pop that picture up, the one I texted you of the house, but it's like kind of the description of the house is kind of like a modular home, and it's got like an add-on underneath it, which I would call the basement area and the garage and everything else. And it was kind of built into a hill, but how high would you say that deck was? Like 15, 20 feet off the ground. You have to walk up steps to get up to the front door. So there's an area doors to get into downstairs, but I would have that all blocked off, with boxes, things like that. We're never really using that door to come inside, and it's just storage down there for us. I would hear running up and down the stairs, things messing around down there, and everything like that. Our smoke alarms would start going off occasionally. And around this time, this is when my wife does ask me, "Hey, Adam, do you think this house is strange?" I said, "Oh, absolutely." And she goes, "Well, why didn't you say anything to me?" I was like, "I didn't want to freak you out, But do I think this house is weird? Oh, 100% I think it's weird. There's things going on. I have no idea, how to explain it. So we're laying on the couch one evening and no TV on, nothing. We're just enjoying each other's company and talking and just laying on the couch. And as we're doing that, I hear from the kitchen area a hum. And my wife's name is Jessica. It hums the syllables of her name. Da, 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 but as a hum. She jumps and she goes, "Did you hear that?" And I repeated the hum back to her. And she goes, "That's exactly what I heard." I said, "Yes, I heard it too." And I was like, "It sounds like coming over here from the kitchen." She goes, "What is that?" I was like, I have no idea. I have no clue. I was like, I know that wasn't you making the sound and it wasn't me. I don't know what we heard. So now we're starting to get freaked out even more than what we already are. So now we're more in tune with it. Oh, we would hear our closet doors shaking around. And even one night as we're laying in our bedroom, and I have 4 kids, 2 are in Florida, and my stepchildren are here with us, but I don't call them my stepchildren. I just always refer to them as my children. So 3 sons, 1 daughter. They're asleep in the bedroom next to ours. And as we're starting to go to sleep and this is the middle of the night, after we get done watching TV, we're laying there in bed about to go to sleep. My back's turned towards the door. She's looking at the door of our bedroom and she screams. She goes, "Oh my God, there's somebody standing right there." And as she said that, she said it was like a flash. It just poof, gone. I turned over. I didn't see anything, but I believe her about these things that are going on. I get up. I go look in the children's room, make sure it wasn't one of them, and maybe she just, they were getting out of bed real quick, and they come over to get us. Both kids are in their room sleeping. And they would have kicked over toys, they would have knocked them over, things like that, if they got out of bed and trying to navigate a dark room. They're sound asleep. I go back in the room, I was like, it wasn't the kids. I was like, I don't know what you've seen, but yes, this is freaky. You know, so, a lot of these things just continuing to start happening. There was another evening where I thought somebody actually broke into our house. I'm hearing running up and down from the steps from the basement, coming up to the door into the top part of the house. I grabbed my pistol, I put one in the chamber. I said, cover your ears if I start shooting. It's going to be loud. We're inside the house. I hear the running starting to come up towards the top of the stairs, and right before it hit the door, I fling it open, gun pointed, and I'm aiming at nothing. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I ended up going downstairs. All the boxes, things are in front of the doors. The doors are still locked. The garage door's not open. That door's locked from the garage to come into that area. I was like, yeah, this isn't right. And we're really freaked out. The kids start mentioning things to us, and of course we don't want to tell the kids, yeah, this is what's going on in the house, because when they're children under the age of 10, or from 10 to what they are now, it's going to really freak them out. And they kept trying to say, yeah, we think there's something in our closet. They would hear things moving around, things like that. And we would just reassure them, look, there's nothing going on, because we don't want them to freak out. But me and my wife, we would discuss it amongst ourselves, like, man, yeah, now the kids are noticing this too. And that was one thing, like, you hear a lot when it comes to things like paranormal, is it usually affects one person first, and it's usually like the wife. But for some reason, it was me first. So when my wife was starting to be more vocal to me about it, I never doubted her. I always listened to what she has to say, and I urge people to do that as well. Like, look, as crazy as some things may sound, just believe them. Don't push it off. They're not making this up out of nowhere just to freak you out. That something's generally scaring them. So I never wanted to be that person that looked at my wife, well, you're a liar, because it's happening to me too. So as all these things are going on, we would also notice outside, when we go outside to go smoke a cigarette on the deck, we would see these, it's about the size of a softball, no bigger than that, of these orbs that were always like weaving around in and out of trees. And it's weird how you kind of see the trails coming off them, as it's going around. And still to this day, I will always hold some type of skepticism into something, because you always got to do your research and you got to look into things. I would walk over to where we would see these lights during the daytime. The lights were at nighttime, but during the day, I would go over to this area. I started looking at the spot. Now, there is a house that is off towards the back right, and you could see their porch light on, but that's not where we were seeing these things at. It was more, to our left and away from that house, going in and out of the trees. On the other side of this trail, it goes down like this, and it's steep. So the trees are just growing up. I'm like, okay, this can't be kids out here running around with flashlight, things like that. And plus you would probably also hear them chuckling or laughing if it was teenagers roaming around the woods, or kids playing, ghosts in the graveyard or something like that, or hide and seek. You would hear them out there. Never hear anything like that. And this wouldn't happen every night. Maybe one time it would happen once during a week, or sometimes 3 to 4 times a week, or nothing at all during the week. But we would always see these lights. Always thought that was a little strange as well. So I'm like, I broke down everything. I couldn't explain it. Okay, this isn't kids running around with flashlights. This isn't the house and the light over there because that light's always stationary. It never moves around. It's not from the trees going like this where I would see the light because, I would just really thoroughly look into it. So as we're living there more, going on, there was this one evening. I go to smoke a cigarette, and it's in the middle of the night. I'm a night owl. I just always have trouble sleeping, insomnia, things like that. I could only get like a couple hours of sleep. I don't know if that's from the time I served in the military, where you're always just working those late hours and you're just up constantly, and you just, you just get used to being like that. I go outside. I light up a cigarette. I'm sitting on the chair we have out there. And my wife's like, well, get a cigarette for me. I'm going to come out there and join you. She was messing around in the kitchen. I hear this loud humming sound. And it's weird how, like, the best way I could describe it is if you sit there and you hum with your mouth closed and you could hear it in your head. And how you could kind of feel a little bit of vibration. My whole body is vibrating to this. Like, in a way, I never had it vibrate before to like a sound. So I'm hearing this loud hum. My body is vibrating to it. I asked my wife, I said, hey, is there an airport close by? She was like, no, I don't think so. She's like, why? I was like, I hear this really loud humming and my whole body's vibrating to this. She comes outside, she lights up a cigarette, and as she does that, I don't know why I looked up, but I did. And as I look up, coming towards the back of the house and plus over the treetops, so the back right, I see this craft starting to slowly come over the top of our house. And that's when the humming and the vibrating stopped. This thing was absolutely silent, not making a sound. You could hear a leaf hit the ground or a mouse fart, if you will. That's how dead silent it was. Dead quiet. Now, as it went dead quiet, and I'm going to show a little example of this, like how I showed you in the pictures, and I thought this was important that to give people like a representation, just so they could see what I'm talking about. Well, as it started coming over top of the house, I could see under the side of the craft and underneath of it, so over the treetops in our house. It had these three little, not little lights, but these three circles, and they were lights. They were spinning around so fast it looked like one continuous light. But as it came over the house and the sound, my body stopped vibrating and I stopped hearing the hum, that's when these things stopped. And I could see it's three circles, and they're like orangish red and ember color, almost like fire when you're looking at it is the best color as I could describe it. They stopped, but they were still barely moving. And what was weird, it was kind of in a counterclockwise, motion as they were going, but they were just like barely even going that direction. I don't remember seeing the treetops or anything like that even moving to this thing as it's going over top of them and our house. I don't feel any wind or anything like that. So when I mention, this is going to be important while I was in the military, I was an aviation ordnanceman. And what I did in the service was I would build bombs and assemble the missiles. We would work on the launchers on the aircraft and the weapon systems with the guns and everything like that, and load up, the ammunition, all the ordnance and everything on before they take off and go drop it or shoot something down. So I've seen a lot of different types of aircraft just from being in the Navy. This thing was not a helicopter. This thing was not any known jet or plane I have ever seen. And it definitely was not even a drone. And it's bigger than the drones they do have out there, you know. And if I was going to give this thing a size, and this is just me trying to, you know, give a correct size, anywhere from 30 to 40 foot. And it was in a classic saucer shape, so I'm going to start showing you this. You know, this is the best way I could describe it. Even this little lip up here. But on this part, I didn't see any windows or anything like that. It would go, but it would kind of pop up and come down on the other end. So if I'm going to go from giving it a size from the front, like the front to the back, anywhere from 30 to 40 foot, you know, no bigger than the 40 foot. So that's the size that I'm thinking it is. And underneath, when I talk about, so you see the bottom of this underneath here. It does have this around the bottom of it. The three circles, what I'm trying to talk about, were like this away from each other. So they would spin so fast, it looked like one connected light, these three circles, but as it stopped, like as I seen it, the humming, the vibration stopped, that's when I noticed these three things underneath that were going counterclockwise. The only other lights I could see on this thing was in this middle part. And it wasn't like light bulbs either. It was like white bluish lights in this part. Those are the only lights I could see. Another thing I noticed was this thing was so smooth, so well constructed, you didn't see where it was put together from one part over another. So what I mean by that, you didn't see any rivet marks, you didn't see any spots or screws, nothing like that. It was just so smooth. And it was a silver color, you know, so classic saucer shape. And that's kind of why I wanted to, you know, show people that on your video, just like I showed you in the text, because I thought that's very important. Everything else. So let me take a drink real quick. So as this thing is still coming over top of the house and everything and moving, it's going straight forward away from our house and away from us. As we seen it, I looked at my wife and I said, "Do you see what I am looking at?" And she goes, "I am looking right at it." So I know I'm not going crazy. You know, because if she would have said, "I don't see shit at him," I'd have been like, "What's going on?" You know, she acknowledges it. I'm like, okay, she's looking at this. We're in shock. I got so many emotions. I'm just staring at this thing. I mean, I'm scared and everything too, you know, just all these different emotions. I'm trying to figure out what I am looking at and experiencing at the time. I was like, no effing way. This is actually happening, you know, as this thing is still going over top of the trees and everything. It's going straight and it's going, you know, very slowly. And it doesn't stop. As it's going straight, it just hits this 90-degree, you know, just going off to the side towards this house we could see over by where a neighbor's house would be through the tree lines and everything. And it's kind of making like this, like really slow descent. And I'm not looking off to my right. I follow it just like this. And I'm looking straight off my deck. And as it's going down, my wife is behind me screaming at me, "Get inside, get the F in the house, Adam, get in here." And I finally snap out of it and I look back at her and she's bawling her eyes out. She has tears running down her face. She looks so scared. And I'm like, wow, you know, I mean, I should listen to my wife, you know, she's scared. I should go be with her, you know. I remember taking a quick glance back, but I don't remember seeing this thing anymore. So I don't know what happened. Like, People talk about portals, things like that, and I don't really know how I really exactly feel about that whole subject as well. You know, could portals exist? They could. I just don't know anything about them. I never seen any rift open up to where it could have went in, things like that. That's why I'm saying that part. That's don't know how exactly I feel about them, but we know these things can move at speeds that are just unimaginable. No jet we have can keep up with these things. If they want to be gone, they're gone. You know, so I don't know if it just shot straight up and it was like poof, it's gone. I don't know what happened to this thing, or the or if it cloaked. I mean, if something can travel across space and time to reach Earth, I don't know what they're capable of. Just because we haven't really explored deep space or anything else like that, that doesn't mean something else out there couldn't have achieved this goal. And, I'm not really a big religious person, and I got nothing against anybody with their religious beliefs. Look, if going to church and things like that make you a better person, I'm all for that. When I'm with my mom, I'll go to church with her, and go spend Sundays with her to go to church and go have brunch afterwards, things like that. I have nothing against it. I think it's good if people are into that. Now, my whole way of thinking is like I've read the Bible from front to back. It never really made much sense to me about a lot of things, but this is where I'm into the ancient astronaut theory, and I could put things together to make it make sense. Now, take something like the book of Enoch, where he talks about when he's going up and he can look down on the earth and see the mountains and the rivers and the seas and the shape of the earth as he's ascending higher. He talks about these lights as he's walking around in the heavens. But there's also other rooms he looks into and he describes what he is seeing. Now, is this like really the first known, you know, extraterrestrial abduction that's actually being talked about here? I don't know, but it damn sure sounds like it. You know, you take something like Ezekiel's wheel. That's like a perfect description of a UFO, of like a saucer shape, something like that in there, because if God, the Almighty Creator, wanted to appear or something like that to us, it'd be like, I'm there. Why do you need a vehicle to come down and you see fire, smoke, the ground shake, just like we see when a shuttle or a rocket takes off, too? Or even Jonah and the whale. And if you get into the Torah and read it out of there, it gives a better description. When he's looking out the eyeball, it's like a window and there's a light in there. Well, now, if someone's swallowed by a big fish or a whale for a couple days, I'm sorry, those stomach acids and everything are going to start eating you up. It's just not going to bring you to shore and spit you out there, and you're still living. So this is how I like. Yeah, like an underwater submersible. Yeah, I would like to think so. And I'm like I said, hey, that's just my thoughts. It's however somebody wants to interpret it. But that's what it does sound like to me too. So this is how I associate things like that, is take the ancient astronaut theory, because when you start taking things like that and applying them, it makes more sense to me. Yep. Yes. I absolutely agree with that, and that's how I like to look at things. So No, it's so great how you just described that. 'Cause that's my whole way of thinking. So, as I hear my wife, I look at her, she's freaking out. I go inside the house. I go in the door, she slams it, she locks the bottom, top lock, and, the other lock we have on the doors. I mean, she's making sure that thing's secure. I sit on the couch. She sits, and the couch is right here, the love seat's right here, and the front of the house is over here. There's a window right here. It's all closed up. The blinds are closed, everything else. I can't see out of it. I'm just sitting there looking at it. She sits on the love seat. I go, I go to speak with her about it. I go to say something. She goes, "Shut up. I do not want to talk about it. Don't bring it up." I have nothing to say about it. And the look in her face, like, she's shocked. Like, she's not snapping out of it yet or anything like that. So I'm like, okay, I'll leave it alone. She's obviously scared. And I'm just sitting there trying to process everything as well. And the weird part about this, now I didn't see any time on the wall. I do remember it was, around midnight or so or afterwards. That's the only time I remember. I didn't look at a clock afterwards. I don't remember going to bed that night. Yeah, I just don't remember. We woke up in our bedroom. I don't remember getting up and actually going there or nothing. I just remember sitting on the couch. She's looking this direction. I'm looking towards the front of the house, towards that window. And I'm just sitting there trying to process everything. And that's all I remember. So I don't want to sit there and say, well, there was missing time or things going on like that because I don't know. I just remember waking up the next day. Don't know how I was in my bedroom or waking up out of bed, but I don't even remember walking there and us going to lay down or anything like that and us going to sleep. It took my wife a couple weeks for her to finally open up and ask me and talk to me about this. And when she did, man, we just kept going over everything. And I have so many regrets of, man, I shouldn't have went in the house. I wish I could have walked down the steps and walked towards this thing more, or I didn't have my phone on me. And that's the thing. You don't think about taking a photo or a video or a picture or anything like that, when all this is actually happening and going on. And that's why I laugh at people when they're like, well, I don't believe you because you should have took a picture. Well, why don't you have something like this happen to you and think, hey, man, what's going to be the first thing you think? Oh, let me take out my phone and do this. Maybe some people might react that way, but there's going to be a majority of people that are going to be like me and my wife of you're in shock, amazement, all these emotions going on through you. You're scared. You don't know what you're actually looking at and experiencing. You're not reaching for that phone, And I try telling people this, and even when it comes to Bigfoot as well, when I'm going to get into that one. So I was so happy she was finally opening it up. We were just like, this just started taking up a lot of time. We were just like, what is this? What did we see? What could it have been? Like, oh my God, these things are actually real. I never thought I would see something like this, but, remember how I was telling you as we talked, there was other things I was leaving for your show? This is what another weird thing that happened. Now I'm being vocal about it. I'm letting people know. Now I'm getting laughed at. I'm getting made fun of. But there'd be other nights we'd be outside and we'd be looking off in the distance in the sky. We'd see other weird things just going up, left, right, straight, and just making these all kinds of weird maneuvers in the sky. I'm like, man, that's no helicopter. This is no plane. Planes can't just automatically just start going sideways, things like that. Now, I would try to videotape this, and what would happen on my phone, we would get these weird messages that are popping up and saying something about how our cameras are not working, things like this. Weird messages I've never seen on a phone. Yeah, very weird. I don't know what's going on, but I'm being very vocal about telling people stuff about what me and my wife are seeing and experiencing. It's something. Because my wife, she never wanted me to really say this. And she goes, people are going to think you're more crazy. I was like, what? More crazy than what they already think about us? You know, after we tell them what we're seeing. We were laying there one night and we were asleep. We wake up, and this is after midnight. Boom, boom, boom. We know you're in there. Open the door. And I'm sitting there, and she was like, Adam, what's going on? I was like, don't move. Don't make a sound. Like, just lay here, you know, because my thinking is, I don't know who this is. It's not the cops, you know, because you would, if a cop shows up to your house, you're going to hear, look, I'm the police department, sheriff's department, things like that. They're not saying anything like that. They just knock it, banging on our door. Boom, boom, boom. We know you're in. Come to the door. We know you're in there. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And she's like, what do we do? I said, don't move. I have my firearms here. I never go open up the door at night to anybody. And that's just something you're instilled with when you're as a child, as a young age. Don't open up the door at night. You don't know who's out there. I'm not going over looking out a peephole, open up the blinds, nothing. I'm trying to be still, not make any noise. I look at her. I said, look, anybody comes in here, I got the pistol, got the shotgun, I got the rifle. They're going to have a bad day. You know, it's already loaded. If they come in, it's on. Get low to the ground. Don't get up. Just let me handle the business. I know it's two individuals. I could hear two guys talking. One guy's banging on the door while another guy's walking back and forth on this deck. And thankfully he didn't go over to the side because there's snow and stuff that's piled up on this deck. And he would have to kind of walk through it and try to, you know, hug up close to the house to get to the other door that's not covered up. And I'm so thankful he did not go over there because he would have really seen that we were in there. You know, the car is parked inside the garage. So, you know, how do you know we're even here? I don't know, but they are very adamant. They wanted us to come to the door and open it up. Now, I don't know who this was. I know it's not her family members. Again, they will not come over that late at night. They would always let us know, hey, we're coming over. We want to see you. And they got no reason to do that in the middle of the night. I don't know anybody. I'm from Florida. You know, she hasn't lived up here in like 13, 14, 15 years. Nobody knows we're really up here living anymore, you know, so no friends, anything like that. And I don't know, maybe if they are bad people, don't open up that door, you know, so I just kind of left it at that. The guy keeps banging a few more times. I hear the one walk down to the car. He yells something back, and finally the one by the door leaves. I find when I hear the car start up and start backing out, I don't see what type of vehicle it was or anything like that. So I don't want to sit here and say, well, maybe it was some type of government agent, you know, and how vocal I'm being over the phone and talking about this and what's happening to our phones. You know, I don't want to go jump straight to that conclusion. So, are you still there, Jared? The screen backed out again. I'll keep going. So, as that happened, I look out the window. I do not see any vehicles there. Don't open up the door. Just always found that very odd. It's starting to come down to the end of our lease. And our landlord says, I'm not going to renew your guys' lease. I'm going to sell this house. In which we reply to the landlord, we want to move somewhere else. We're thinking about moving up to Michigan anyways. We don't want to resign a lease because we're totally freaked out. You know, we just have so much things going on in this house, things like that. But what starts getting me into the possibility of Bigfoot and why it's on my mind, I don't know if I was watching a show one night, and that's probably what I was doing, was I was watching the show, and I always see them out in the woods or rural areas, things like that. It clicks into my head. Hey, if these things exist, it's going to be an area. You can hear me? Okay. If these things actually exist, and I'm talking about Bigfoot because your screen popped off and came back on, it's going to happen in an area like where we're living in a rural town, off in the country, things like that. So this is after me and my wife have the UFO encounter, things like that, the paranormal's going on. I get the bright idea of I'm going to start banging sticks together. And let me unplug. Let me unplug my headphones. I'm going to start banging sticks together. I'm going to start doing the whoops and things like that, what I see on TV shows, what have you. I start doing things like that, and I have this area outside the house where I would take fruits, vegetables, stew meat, things like that, and I would just go toss it off to the side. Now, I would have, we always have deer and things like that in our yard. They go over, eat the vegetables, things like that. Bears would come in. So one night I'm sitting there going out to the door. I didn't have my flashlight on me, but I kept it close to the door if I needed it. So as I light up a cigarette, I look down off towards my right, towards the ground, and I noticed something was there eating off whatever I threw out there. As I look down and I lock eyes on this thing, and the eyes were pretty big too, like how a moose eyes would be. And the reason the reason why I'm saying that, this thing just started raising up, almost like it was standing up, and it just wasn't stopping. This thing was tall. I'm like, what the hell is this? The eyes are green. The shine I'm getting off of them. I go, holy shit, what is this? I run inside, right as I was running inside, I noticed it starting to walk off, and it was like 3-4 steps this thing is going. But I run inside, grab my flashlight, and I shine on it. But as it was walking away, its two eyes were always on me. I go get my flashlight, nothing's out there. After I grab my flashlight, I'm like, what the hell did I just see? I chalked it up to a moose. We do have them up here, and that's the thing. I just always don't jump to the conclusion of, hey, this is absolutely what it'd be. I have to look into it. So I found that really weird. There was another night. I'm sitting there and I hear chattering, and there was two things. They were chattering, and I'm trying to think of the best way to describe, like what their voice, almost like they would have like the voice of a duck or a frog. As the chatter is going on, it was like the sound of but it was like chatter. But that's the best way I could describe like what their voices sound like. But it's not a duck quacking, it's not a frog croaking or things like that. That's just what it sounds like when they're talking about how what the words are coming out is sounding like, if that makes any kind of sense. I know it's a little weird, but I'm just trying to make it make sense for you. I told my wife, hey, I hear something. It sounds like chatter. And I was like, there's two things chattering back and forth. I don't know what it is. I was like, this is really weird. So I'm starting to hear things like that. Still not a believer. I'm still a huge skeptic into it. And I'm not jumping to, hey, this is what it is. There was another night we were laying there. Our house got hit so hard, it shook it. I jump up. I run outside. I hand my wife my pistol. I run outside with my AR. And I said, if anything runs up behind me, just start shooting. Just scream, there's something, start shooting. I'm checking out around the house, everything like that. I don't see anything out there. Dead silent, like eerie silent. I'm like, okay, let me get back inside before something, maybe happens. Didn't see anything like that. So go So we're starting to have all these things starting to happen. Every once in a while, maybe I would hear a wooden knock reply. Still, I'm not associated with it, and sometimes we would sleep with our windows open during certain times of the year. We would hear things walking around the house. Once again, still not, hey, this is a Bigfoot or anything like that. So going back to our landlord where he said, I'm selling the house, I'm not renewing the lease. We were like, we're just fine with that. We're moving up to Michigan anyways. That's where we're going to relocate. My wife's getting a job up there, things like that. We pack up, we leave the house, and it was just like a huge relief at that point. Like, okay, we're not sitting here freaked out at night, hearing things run around our house, scuffle around, things like that. It's just a huge relief. Just that feeling was awesome. We go stay with her dad until we find a place, and this was for a couple months. And this is going to that property I sent you of that aerial view of that. Now, when you see in this property, you see the house there. You see the creek going through the yard and everything leading out to this lake. And this is still in Minocqua, Wisconsin. But when you go to this area, you got to pass through the Indian reservation of Lac de Flambeau. And that's where the native tribe, the Ojibwe tribe, has their land and things like that. But the part we moved to is still considered Minocqua, Wisconsin. It was called this place. The lake was called Squaw Lake. They recently has changed it over the last couple of years to Amber Lake Road. To Amber Lake, and the roads are called East Squaw Lake or West Squaw Lake Road. And they have changed that to Amber, East Amber Lake Road, West Amber Lake Road, along with the lake. So we lived on East Amber Lake Road at the time, and it's getting towards the end. Surrounded by just woods everywhere, It's awesome. I love that property. We're on 5 acres of land. I'm fishing all the time, catching walleye, bass, pike, crappie, bluegill. If we want fresh fish, we just go right out back. We go catch them. We bring them inside. When I'm fishing out there by this dock, I would always get this weird feeling going on. And when we moved into this house, this didn't stop me from doing the wood knocks and doing some whoops at night, things like that. But as it would start getting dark, that heavy feeling of being watched would just really start coming onto you heavily. I'm always looking around and I was thinking, okay, if a black bear runs up on me, I'm jumping in the water, I'm tossing my fish towards them, or I'm yelling, if they want to get aggressive, I'm going to do that first. I'm going to make myself bigger, yell and scream at them, and in hopes they run away, If anything, I'm giving you my fish. It's not worth my life over some food you want. I would notice things like that. Now, one evening, me and my wife are standing outside. We're looking back towards the lake. And we see this thing just haul ass coming from the creek and the bushes over here, tear ass across the back towards the boathouse and the big boathouse in back. And it had a motion sensor light on it. This thing pops on right as it's getting by that boathouse. I don't know what it was, but the damn thing was fast. My wife seen that. She goes, holy shit, you see this? I was like, yeah. I don't know what that was. The neighbors aren't at the house next door. I don't know if it was someone out there screwing around, but it was decently tall too. It was about as tall as me. But it didn't look like it was wearing like really any definitive type of clothing. It was all like just one solid color to me, It was more of like a darkish brown color, if I would say, Boom, 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 thing's gone. There's another night as I'm out there, standing out back, and my wife, I don't know why she doesn't remember this. This is the one thing that she does not remember, but she was the one who brought it up to me. She goes, hey, does it look like it's dark, it's nighttime, does it look like something standing off towards this open area where you could see the boathouse and everything like that out towards the back of the property. But, you got bushes here, and the trees overhang, and you got bushes over here, but you could see clearly through it. So I see this huge silhouette standing there. I was like, yeah, I see that. It looks like something's standing right there. I catch movement off to my left. My wife's walking inside the house. As I start going looking to my left towards the tree line where I'm seeing the movement, I get a whistle at me. And my head pops back straight. And what does my dumb ass do? I didn't know about this. I whistle back at it. It whistles again to me, the same whistle. I mimic it back to it. And I'm like, what's going on? As I'm doing that, my wife, she's starting to come back out of the house. It whistles to me again 3 times. It did it, and I responded 3 times. She goes, what are you whistling at out here? I was like, I don't know. Something's off over there where we see the silhouette. It's whistling at me. Now, it didn't really sound like a bird whistle either, That was the weirdest part. And I hear a lot of the birds and the calls up here where we're at. It doesn't sound like anything like that. Now, as that stopped, she came out. It's not whistling anymore. We're still smoking our cigarette. We hear something starting to walk into the creek, and we hear it bipedally. 2 legs, 2 feet, walking through the creek. And this thing, it has some force when it's putting its foot down in the water. It's like, boof, boof. But as each time it's going to start taking that step and raising the leg and foot up, you could hear the water dripping off of it, which you would think is the leg and the foot where the water's coming off of it and dripping down before it takes each step. We look at each other and we were like, what the hell is that? I was like, I don't know, but let's get inside. Like, I don't want to know what it is, because you have wolves, cougars, bears, coyotes, all kinds of different types of predators up here. And I mean, even our bobcats are way bigger than the ones down there in Florida, We do know there was close to a 400-pound black bear on the property, but this thing is not walking on 4 legs, and it was seen one time walking up the driveway. We get inside, we start talking about, I was like, that was 2 feet. I heard that walking on. She goes, no, absolutely. That was 2 feet. It was, taking the steps. I was like, okay, we're clear about that. Still not a believer. I'm just finding all these things are a little weird. Things are going on, and I can still continue to do my whoops and howls and, wood knocking and all that. Our trash can, we would take it out the night before the trash day. And since the trash was getting into so much, we'd start putting bungee cords on. And we would put 5+ bungee cords on these trash cans, and the garbage men up here, they would pop them off, or we would do it the next day, before we leave the house, before the garbage man come on, we would pop them off for them, so they wouldn't have to. What was weird is sometimes we would have our trash out of the trash can. Sometimes it would be ripped apart. But the weird times was when the trash bag is actually taken out of the trash can, set on the ground, you would find trash all around it like it was picked through. But it was opened up like somebody, with hands opened it up and they were just picking through it. And they would always leave it right there. So I would just walk up, always have an extra trash bag with me, but the times it's not ripped, I just put it right back in the same trash bag. Like the paper products and the plastics and things like that. If it was food, I was like, I'm not touching that nasty food, something will come along and eat it like a raccoon or something. Put it back in the trash can. But I always found it really weird, like, man, these, if we're not the one, we put on the bungee cords, we're not the ones popping them off when these things are, when the trash is going through it. Always found that weird. My father-in-law, he was like, oh, that's just the bear. And I was like, no, a bear's going to tear open a trash bag. I was like, I have found like ones like that. I was like, how do you explain the ones that aren't ripped open? He didn't have an explanation. So at probably about a couple weeks after I was whistled at, we're laying in bed, and this house is kind of like, it's bigger than the one we moved from, but kind of like the same setup. You know, the main area is up top, and this downstairs basement area where you could get into and everything like that is at the bottom level, and that's where we lived at. We had our own living area while we were staying there, and they did that for guests as well. We're laying in bed one night, and I hear the water splashing outside. So my mind goes right to thinking, you know, since I love fish and everything, man, fish are tearing up the bait out there right now. They're eating the hell out of these minnows or whatever it is. And that's what it sounded like to me. I was like, I looked at my wife. I was like, hey, Jess, I'm going to run outside. I'm going to go check this out. She goes, yeah, do whatever you want. I grab my flashlight, haul ass out of the door, and I go across our little, you know, dirt driveway, and there's this like little slope right here. You know, you can just run down it real quick, and then boom, you're right at the creek. So I go out the door, go across, go down it real quick, pop my flashlight on, and holy shit, there it is. My light's shining right on the damn thing. I'm standing there like this, and I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? And this thing is crouched down in like a catcher's position. You could see it like sitting on the back of like how a catcher in baseball would be, how they kind of sit on the back of their heels or almost touching them when they're in that crouch position. Same exact thing. I could see its arm and its hand, you know, like one's resting over here on its knee and the other hand's going like this in the water. I'm thinking, okay, this thing is fishing. And this is a thought after the fact. But as I'm watching that and it's moving its hands in the water, I'm like, okay, what am I looking at? I was like, this thing, it has a human body, arms, legs, feet. You know, this is no bear, this is no deer, no wolf, no coyote, no mountain lion, you know, none of these things. I'm ruling out all these things. And I'm standing there. I'm shaking. I'm so damn scared. I damn near pissed my fucking self. Oh, sorry about that. I meant to watch that word. I damn near peed my pants because I'm that scared what I'm actually looking at. I'm that much in shock, and I'm standing there and my hand's going like this and I'm shaking. And as my light continues to shine on this thing, when it looks at me, it moves its whole top, top of the body towards me. And that was the thing I noticed. I didn't really see a neck. It was just head and shoulders. So it's not going like this looking at me. It's moving its whole, like how Patty, when she looks back at Bob Gimlin, same exact thing. It moves its top half of the body. It looks at me. And when it did this, I don't know if I was making it mad. Its top lip, and this is the only thing I will say was ape-like on this thing, because it looked more relic hominid to me. It flipped its lip up towards its top nostrils and nose area and opened its mouth, showing me its teeth. And the best way I could describe its teeth are like chiclets. You know, the gum chiclets, the big square looking gum, but the squares are huge in its mouth. I don't notice any canines or anything like that, just big square white teeth. And it's got its mouth open to me with its top lip flipped up. I'm still standing there with my light on it, and as it did that, after it showed me its teeth, these things are incredibly fast. It got back into the the cattails and everything real quick. It was like, poof, gone. And like a blink of the eye, I was like, holy shit. Still got my light pointed towards that area because I'm still in shock. I'm like, well, what am I actually seeing? And it's starting to go through my head like, oh my God, this is what people are actually talking about. They actually see a Bigfoot. Now that is popping through my head. because that's the only way I could explain this thing. When I would pop my light off and turn it off, I could hear it walking on 2 feet through the weeds, cat tails, and everything, but it's staying hidden back there where I can't see it. I pop my light on to where I would think it was at, it would stop immediately. I'd flick my light back off, I would hear it starting to walk around. When what it's doing is coming around to my right hand side, almost in like, if you're ever in the military, a flanking motion coming around to my right, and over on that side of where that creek area is at, it gets a little shallower. Both how do I want to say it, like my side of this creek and that side, it comes together closer. So I noticed it's starting to do that. I run back inside. I slam the door. I'm locking it. I'm putting things down to where the door can't be slid open. I'm throwing chairs, clothes, everything in front of this door. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "There's something out there. If it comes through this door, you go grab your dad. You tell him to come down here and start shooting. That's what I'm going to be down here doing. You just get upstairs. You go grab him and you tell him to get down here immediately with his shotgun." And I was just so freaked out. And I always feel like something was always could look through us because we never kept it like closed or anything like that, with a curtain. It would always feel like something was watching you through that door. But after that, that's when I kept sheets and everything up over that curtains. No way I wanted anything looking through this door out of sleeping or anything else ever again. I just laid there until I finally fell asleep that night, just thinking about it in my head. Oh my God, I can't believe I actually seen this. I can't believe I actually just had an encounter. And that is when I finally turned from a skeptic into a believer that these things actually do exist. Now, going back, let me take a sip of my drink real quick. Now, going back to where this thing was crouched down by the the edge of the water, where it was reaching down in the water, I'm thinking, okay, this thing must have been trying to catch fish or crawfish or things like that in the water when it's moving its hand down there. And this is after the fact. I could see its skin, its face, everything. The only thing I did not notice was a neck. I did not notice ears on the side of its head. It didn't go up into a full conical shape. And this thing was, I'm 6 foot tall, around there. This thing wasn't much taller than me. I'm putting it at about 6'4", 6'5". So I'm thinking maybe this is the younger one, and that one that walked across the creek, that was the big boy. So we probably got a family unit out here. Now the hair on it was probably about 4 to 6 inches long. It may have been matted in some areas, but then it was thinner in others where I could see its skin. And the skin, what it looks like is like this sun-beat leathery texture. As I would say what it would like how it could feel. But if you look at people like that are out in the sun, how they're just beat down, that leathery look. Now it was this thing, the hair was all black. It was black as well, but its skin kind of had like an ashy gray color to it.
Right.
The eyebrows protruded. There was like hair back here as the forehead went back. And there was hair all around the face and everything like that. Almost like, how mine comes down with the beard and everything. The eyes were big. The pupils were huge. I couldn't see much white, but when I had my light flashed on it where the white would be, that's where it lit up in the eyeballs. It didn't have a bridge of the nose like how I do, but down here, the nostrils were just big and huge. Bunch of wrinkles in its face and everything like that, and on its forehead. The thing was, I mean, it was still pretty built, ripped. Since, I mean, for it being the size, like the height it was still, you could see the muscles and everything. And I'm guessing this thing is a male. I do not see any female breast or things like that. Now, I didn't see what was between the legs either, but it just looked like a male to me. And I'm probably spot on because I would think, given its size, still around 6'4", 6'5", it would have some type of breast on it if it was a female.
Right.
But it had like pecs like a male. So, but like I said, the hair was matted in areas and thinner in other areas where I could see the skin, even on the arms and the legs and everything. Its feet were huge too. They were long, for it sitting up on the top of it. God, that it's still incredible to think about it to this day. It was amazing.
Yep.
Like how I said, that was the day I went from a skeptic into a believer.
Okay.
So now, what do you think I start doing again?
Now let me ask you.
I start telling people about it. Now I'm hearing the same ridicule as what I used to tell, I used to give people grief about into the subject. And it actually put me into a real depressed mood about it too. Oh, we're getting ready to move from this area, go up to Michigan and live up there. And before we did, we were standing outside one night because I always told my wife, don't go outside and go smoke a cigarette or get something from the car if it's dark outside without me being there.
Right.
Because I'm freaked out. There is something around here other besides the predatory type animals. I never wanted anything to happen to her and made sure I was always there. This happened so as we're standing out by our door smoking a cigarette, I hear towards the front of the house, almost like, how a shovel or a rake or something like that, how the wood could hit the house and you could hear it, like, bap, 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 hit off the house if you trip over it or knock it into the side of the house. Yep. That's what I hear. And as soon as I hear that, I hear the most blood-curdling, weirdest scream ever just get let out. And me and my wife looked at each other, eyes open. Holy shit, what was that? I was like, I don't know. Let's get inside because I don't want to find out. And this is after the fact of I had my encounter and I'm knowing what it is now. It's probably walking around her house like how it always does in the middle of the night and just scoping things out, whether it's window peeking or something like that. But this is towards the area where the kids' rooms where they were sleeping at the grandparents' house before we got up here in the Michigan. I always felt really terrible about that. Of when we were moving, I was like, oh my God, did I bring this thing around my in-laws' house? Did I draw it into here? Are they going to have to deal with this when we leave? And that was always on my mind. And since then, they did move away from that area, into a different house later on. And which I felt better that, okay, they would never have to deal with that ever again if they ever had to. We live up here in Michigan for, another year or so. I'm going through that, kind of depression about it, of just hearing people laughing at me, had my own family members laugh at me, things like that. Nobody's really believing me when I'm telling them about this, and I'm just being dead serious. And I understand why some family members did kind of chuckle at me because I was always a huge jokester when I was younger. And I always like to pull fast ones on people and things like that. And so I get why they were hesitant. And I was like, no, I'm dead serious. I'm trying to tell you, this is what's going on. Like, there's things out here we don't know about. and you don't go out there in the woods without being armed or anything like that. And they're like, okay, I'm trying to pull my leg again. I'm like, no, I'm really not. Um, so my wife looks at me one day. She was like, how about you get into hunting? That's a big thing up here. It will, give you something to do going into the fall and winter time and get you outdoors active. So you were in the military. You like shooting guns. You like doing this. You'll like hunting. I was like, yeah, okay. You're probably right. So I start getting into that, and I'm self-teaching myself how to deer hunt. I get crossbows and all that. Me and my father-in-law, we find this one area up here, and it's in Gogebic County, right outside Wakefield, Wisconsin. We're sitting there. We find this area. He was like, man, this place would be awesome for grouse, things like that. He goes, you should probably even deer hunt out here. Look at all the land out here. You just go up here, just go set up a blind and, maybe throw out some apples or two, or even put out your scents, to try to bring in a buck. I was like, yeah, you're right. I get out there, I first put up my blind, and on opening day, this thing was ripped out of the ground and tossed across the trail. And, you could secure these pop-up blinds down really good like a tent. This wasn't the wind doing it or anything else. And I was like, wow, what's going on? I tried out that area, I was like, yeah, I'm not really getting anything. I was like, let me go on to the other side of this foothill where this other trail's at, going out towards the power line, and sit there. When I moved over to this area, this is where I would start getting a bunch of strange things that are happening. I'm still fresh into what I seen and everything like that. So now I'm starting to kind of dive into that rabbit's hole about, that whole subject. And, it would help me hearing other people's encounters. Okay, I'm not the only one. These people are seeing this as well. So, it was kind of like a therapy to me, I guess, in a way. But I would be sitting there in that blind. I wouldn't set my blind up underneath any trees because I don't want like some widowmaker coming down, crashing into me, and I wouldn't catch it at first sitting inside a blind and it'd kill me or something like that. So I know it wasn't snow dripping off trees or anything like that, but I always hear things hit my blind. And towards the back of me where I was sitting, I'm like, what the hell? I would chalk it up, maybe it was this or that, just putting that into my mind. I would always feel like I was being watched a lot of times. Not all the time, but a lot of times when you're going in there, I just get this overwhelming feeling. And there was this one time I'm sitting there in my blind, and that feeling came over me so heavily that I put my head down and I held on to the rifle. I put my head down and I just stared at the ground with my head down by my legs, looking at my lap. And I did that for 10 to 15 minutes. And I kept telling myself, don't look out to your right. Don't look out to your right. Don't look out to your right. And it was like that for 10 or 15 minutes. After that feeling went away, I said, the hell with this. I'm out here. There has been other days I would be walking out there, and I would just get this weird feeling as I'm going towards my blind of I'm being watched. And I'm like, nope, I'm not dealing with this today. And I'll walk back to my car. So I did that. That was the first year. Following season, I go back out there because this is the only place I know where to hunt. I mean, I'm catching really nice bucks on camera and things like that. It's just getting them to come in at the right time for you to take the shot off at one.
Yeah.
So the following year, I bring somebody out there with me so I could feel a little bit better about it. I wouldn't tell them about all these things either. He gets set up on the other side of this power line. And every once in a while, we would exchange photos with each other, things like that. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I am not catching shit on my camera. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, come over here and just look. He's like, I'm not catching anything. My bait's gone some of the times. He goes, I'm not catching anything on camera, things like that. When I go over there and look where he's set up at, because on his camera, every once in a while, you would see a stick flick in front of his camera.
Oh.
You know, and I'm thinking, maybe that's close by a bush or something like that, and the wind's doing it. You know, or you would see a stick getting thrown in front of the photos. And I'm like, wow, that's strange. Like, what's going on? But hey, maybe it could be falling down from a tree above you. You know, that's just me being always carrying that skepticism into things. And I jump to the conclusion. I turn around and I look behind his blind, and it wasn't far off away from it. There's these 2 trees stuck in the ground in this X formation like this.
Oh, wow.
And next to that formation are 3 other trees that are bent all the way over to the ground and twisted and stuck in the ground.
Yeah.
And there's 4 of them right next to that thing. And I was like, whoa, check this out. You know, look how weird this is. I was like, wonder what did this. You know, it didn't fall from the trees above it. You know, they were totally different types of trees that were right there. That was the thing. You know, I looked up, I was like, okay, that's not the top of the trees. And man, how they would have to be dropped from the top of the trees, like 2 separate ones, and then fall into an X formation. I could never explain that.
Right. Yeah. It would have to be.
It would have to be
just perfect. To get just like that falling from a tree.
Exactly. And to do it at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, and there was one part on the tree that comes off of it to where it helped nestle and sit in there too, as it was stuck in the ground.
Yep.
So all this is, I'm noticing all this stuff and things like that. It's getting into the season. And this guy was kind of a pain in my ass as well. Like, he would always be walking around, scaring deer off, things like that. But you want to know what? I did feel better that he was out there. He gives me a text one day. We need to leave. We need to get out of here. I'm at the car. I'm ready to go right now. Get to the vehicle. We're leaving. Because I rode with him. I was like, man, it's early in the day. I was like, what the hell? I was like, you know, did your wife call you? No, I'm ready to get out of here. So I was like, well, give me some time to walk all the way back to where the vehicle's parked at and everything like that. I pack up my gear. I walk towards them. I get to the vehicle. This guy is as white as a ghost. And like, he's all freaked out. I'm never coming back here again. I'm done. I'm done hunting. I don't want to be out here anymore. This is all you. Like, you know, I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, what's going on? He goes, I just had something thrown at me. It goes over my head and almost hits me in my head. I was like, what? He's like, a big rock. I was like, no way. And the size of this thing was like almost the size of a basketball, anywhere from a volleyball to a basketball size. And I was like, where is that? Take me to it. He goes, I'm not getting out of my vehicle. I was like, what? And I was like, come on, man. I was like, we both have a rifle, you know. Now I also carry bear spray on me too. I was like, we got bear spray, we got a rifle with, you know, knives on us. I was like, we're good. We'll be together. He goes, nope, I'm not getting out of this vehicle. He goes, you walk up that trail, go up here, you'll see where I came from. I go up there. I found where he was at, and I find that rock. And you could tell it was deliberately thrown. There was dirt and snow all, you know, like brushed away from where it landed. Wow. And I was like, holy shit. And you could see where he was sitting at. And I go back, I was like, yeah, you know, I've seen the rock and everything like that. He goes, I'm done. He goes, never again am I coming out here hunting. I was like, all right. You know, so I still continue to hunt there. Now, this is over where that tree structure was at. This is where I would hear, it would either sound like rocks clacking together or sticks hitting a tree. Mm-hmm. And one of the times, like, I'm being stupid. Why is somebody out here hammering on, you know, taking nails and hammer and going away at something, building something? Nobody was ever out there. There's no houses close by to this. You know, there's no other hunters. I would never really see anybody else except for two people. One guy has his camp a couple miles away up the road, and another guy, he would hunt up by his camp. And I would end up asking these guys later on, like, look, does anything weird out here happen? Like, you know, I just can't really explain it. And they're like, yeah, I know what you're talking about, but we kind of left it at that and didn't really get into it more. But this is where I would hear these knocks come from. I heard that scream come from that area. And whenever you would get by this tree structure, you'd always feel like you were being watched. So I just avoid that area. You know, I wouldn't go by it. I learned just to stay away from it. You know, just go off to my right, down the other side of the, you know, I'm not going to go up to the power line, take a left up towards where it's at. I'm going up here, either going straight across or I'm going down off towards my right if I'm going to go hunt in that section of the woods. But this section over here, nope, I'm staying away from that.
Yep.
Well, I ended up cutting over by it one day because I was tracking a deer. You know, I was like, I'm bored sitting in my blind. There's, you know, a little bit of snow on the ground. I could track a deer, you know, and if you're quiet enough and going through the snow, you won't make a sound. I found children's toys out here. It was weird, like little dolls and things like that, or little trucks, all in this little pile. And this was over towards that. And I was like, okay, this is not right. There's no houses out here. Where these toys just come from? And these are in the middle of the woods where there's no trail, nothing leading to this area. And I always found that a little strange as well.
Yeah, that's very strange, especially since there's no houses in the area. So how far is whatever this thing is traveling to be bringing children's toys out in the middle of the woods?
They would either have to come from, I forget the one town, I believe it's Ontonagon, and the other one is Wakefield, and this place is kind of right in the middle. I mean, there's still probably, 8 miles in between getting to these two places, these two little small towns, and they're small towns. And that, I did always find that weird. I was like, man, there's no kids out here walking around, especially like these are toys like you would see a 5-year-old play with, especially, there's no 5-year-old kid out there. I would never see anybody out here. Another day, I'm walking out. It's probably 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, because you always want to get out there early when it's still dark, getting, whether you're going to your blind or, a tree stand or something like that. You want to get out there, an hour minimum so everything gets settled back down.
Yeah.
I get out there a couple hours early before sunrise. And this is the best way I could describe this. If you ever heard the Ohio or Michigan howl videos, where it goes, what? And it just goes for a long time and then it goes back down silent again. And it almost sounds like to me like a fire truck siren.
Right.
It's not, I know what a fire truck siren is, and it's not this, but it has that pitch to it. Where it starts off low, goes real loud and carries, and then it goes back out again. I'm halfway down the trail going to my blind. I hear that thing go off back towards the area where my vehicle's parked at. And it wasn't at my vehicle. It was still off in that other set of woods that was across the street. And it still had a little bit of distance, but it was loud and close enough for me to hear. When that thing went off, that set off the wolves. I started hearing wolves howling. And I heard them from behind me and off to the right of me as I'm walking, because I stopped and I hear that. And I was like, the hell with this. I hauled ass to my blind. And I don't know why I felt so safe sitting in that thing, because those pop-up blinds is just like a tent. Man, those things could be easily ripped. Mm-hmm. But I felt safe in there. It was like, okay. I ended up finishing out the whole day there, but I left before it got dark at nighttime. I just sat in there and I'm just oh my God, like, what was that? And later on, when I listened to the Ohio Howl video and the Michigan Howl, I was like, whoa, that's the same exact thing I heard right there.
Right.
This area is really freaking me out now. I said, the hell with this. I don't want to hunt anymore. I'm just having too many things go on. I hate the feeling of being watched. I'm starting to tell my wife about it. She's seeing that I'm in a down mood. She knows something's bothering me. She's at the hair salon one day, and at this hair salon, it's like tanning and pedicures, manicures, and all that, and you get your hair done, you know. And she's telling the lady as she's getting her hair done about all this, and she goes, "I know a guy, and he's actually here right now that's really into what you're talking about." And she goes and grabs him, and this is Todd. This is how I meet Todd, the guy who I do the podcast with. He comes over. My wife tells him a quick little breakdown. He goes, "Here's my business card." He goes, "I'm a Navy vet too." He's like, "Have your husband give me a call." My wife tells me all about that, and she's like, "Here's the card. Maybe you should give this guy a call." I didn't call him right off the bat because still it was just, I haven't learned to deal with all the ridicule and the people not believing me, taking me seriously, things like that. I'm like, oh, why do I want to contact this person? It's just going to be another person who's just going to laugh at me. It took me over a month to finally get into contact with them. When I finally did, we arranged a meet up. He goes, "Look, I'll come pick you up from your house." He goes, "Take me out to this area, show me around." And I said, "Do you mind if I bring my gun with me? Because I'm not going out there without it." He goes, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." He goes, I carry anyways too. He's like, "Bring whatever you want if it makes you feel better." I was like, okay. I load up my rifle and all that. And I ended up didn't taking it out with me. I left it inside the truck because I found out he had a sidearm, but I did carry my bear spray on me. He goes, "Take me around to where all these places are." But before we get out there, I was still hesitant even about talking to him. Mm-hmm. So I'm still quiet at first. And he kind of reassured me. He goes, "Look, no matter how crazy it sounds, just tell me." He goes, "I am not going to make fun of you." He goes, "Just tell me, open up." So I was like, "Fine, here it is, And he's sitting there listening to me. He goes, "No, I know what you're talking about." He goes, "These are all classic signs, dude." He is like, "Yeah." He goes, I honestly believe you." He goes, "What you're experiencing out there." I go show him around different things, take him over the tree structure, all that good stuff. And he was like, "I think you're having some experiences out here with them. And if it's not just one, it's probably a family unit of them." Especially, the things that you're finding, what's going on. You're just getting always, I would get followed out of these woods off to the side of me, but I never knew what it was. I was whistled at again another time at this place. And this is after I met Todd. He goes, "Look, you got nothing to be afraid of." He goes, "I understand you're a little freaked out." He goes, "Have you ever tried this? When you're entering the woods, just announce yourself. Hey, this is who I am. You know who I am. I'm coming in here to hunt. Leave me alone. I leave you alone." I was like, "No, I never tried anything like that. Why would I do something like that? That sounds a little weird." He goes, "Give it a try." And I did. From that point on, it made me feel a little bit better. But sometimes there were days I listened to my gut instinct to where I shouldn't be there. And this is actually starting to walk into the trail after I park my vehicle and I'm going to go back to where I get all set up and everything. And there were days where I was like, and he told me to. He goes, "If you ever feel like that, listen to what your body is trying to tell you." Right. He goes, and go back to your vehicle. But on other days when you don't feel like that, just acknowledge yourself. And I would. And eventually, I was feeling okay about it, but I was still a little off at times and things like that. I did get some deer out of there. And before I ended up going to hunt another spot, and get invited to a private property. I'm checking my cameras one day, and I'm walking out, and almost towards the car, and I hear that weird whistle again. It's something similar to where I experienced it at that property before my encounter. I immediately stopped, my hair standing up, and I like looked towards the area where I heard it from. And it was only a one-time whistle. I did, and this is after the fact of now I'm reading stuff of you hear a whistle in the woods, don't whistle back at it. So this time I did not mimic it back. I did not whistle. I kind of stood there for a second. I was looking around. I was like, all right, get out of here. I go out towards where my vehicle's parked at. I see a vehicle coming down the road, and they kind of stop not too far away from me. And I said, hey, you guys working out here today? And they're like, yeah, we're just got to check a few things over right in here inside the little wood line and stuff like that. I was like, well, did you guys leave somebody out here? Because somebody's, he's out here whistling at me. I don't know if maybe he thought it was you. He goes, and there was two guys there like, what are you talking about? There's nobody with us. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, just be careful when you're in here. Yeah. Just be careful. Just mind your surrounding, things like that. They're like, oh, okay, thank you. And I was like, yeah, the hell with this. This is kind of starting getting around the time where I meet somebody else. He's like, hey, I got private property. You come out here and hunt. And that's kind of where I left it at that place. Todd will agree with you, because you're going to be getting a hold of him.
Yep.
I gave him your information and everything, so he's going to be on the lookout for that. He's been out to that area as well. He'll tell you it's a little weird and freaky out there.
Yeah.
He brought somebody else out there. They didn't want to go back any further. He's like, come on, I just want to go check out this. And like, no, let's get back to the car. There were a couple other times where, not at that property, but out towards where we live, because we live close to Lake Superior, out by the ski resort. And this is just a huge wooded area where we heard like these howls happening, where these yells happen. And my wife was like, oh my God, I never heard that before. And I was like, yeah, did you hear the other one respond back to it? She goes, yeah, what is that? And I was like, that's a Bigfoot. And you could hear these things yelling over the coyotes going off. Yeah. And you heard it coming from two different areas. Like this one yelled from over here, but this one answered it back. And she's like, I never heard that before. There was another time where we were sitting out there. This was at 2:00 in the morning. We were getting ready to go to bed. We were having our last smoke for the night after watching movies and everything. We were tired. There was something that was across the street. And one of the guys did tell me on that street, he goes, man, there's been somebody, it seemed like somebody walking around here, messing around by houses and stuff like that at night. He goes, it's really weird. He's like, just be on the lookout for that. And I'm standing out there and I hear a tree branch snap. And this is when I did whistle to kind of make a sound at it. And I hear snap, snap. And I was like, what? Like, just thinking in my head, what's going on? I whistle at it again and snap, snap. My wife's like, we're going inside. Stop doing this right now. You're worrying me. I was like, wonder what that was. I never seen that, so I couldn't confirm what it was. Just that, that late at night, in this wooded area, after each time I would do something, it would just break branches deliberately, like it was mad that I was doing it too.
Yeah.
But I couldn't ever see it. Now, where we heard those yells and howls coming from, it was towards Lake Superior. And come to find out, now this is the only part I'm going to say about this, because Todd had experiences out here in this part with his brother. I never told him about that. And he goes, hey, I got this area I want to show you. He goes, me and my brother were out here. This is what happened. And I was like, dude, no shit. And I was like, me and my wife heard calls coming back from this area. So that was a little like cool in that part, but because we never talked about that specific area, and for that to happen, him experience something out there, I'm hearing these calls come from, things like that, was pretty cool. So, but that's
That
pretty much all I got to say with the encounters, experiences, and things like that.
yeah, that's wild, man. Thinking about a couple of things. I want to go back to your UFO real quick. You watched it come over the house. It made that kind of like 90-degree movement and started heading off in the other direction. You said that so did you see it take off just really fast, or was it just like gone?
It was just like gone.
Okay.
That was the thing. It was like that. That's why I mentioned, like, I didn't see no rift open up for a portal or things like that. I didn't see it shoot straight back up. I just remember it not being there when I gave a quick glance at it again. It's just before I went in my house, I'll look back real quick. I don't remember seeing it. So I don't know what happened to it. But for something to take off that fast, like, man, the human body, I don't think could withstand the G forces or something like that.
No, it would.
I don't know if they have some type of cloaking ability or something like that. And see, I will associate like a cloaking ability to something like this, and not something like with a cryptid. That's why I say I like to keep them all separated, because if something could travel through space and time to come visit us, why couldn't it have achieved something like that?
Right.
Kind of, almost like that movie Predator.
Yep.
Like, it could be there and you could kind of notice something, but it's kind of invisible as well.
Okay.
I don't know if it's something like that, and I, like how I told you, I'm on the fence about the whole portal thing, in the dimensions it could travel through. I don't know. I would have to look more into that. But, I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibilities, I guess, It's just, I don't get into it that much on it, you know? Okay. But, yeah, I never, and that's something my wife even said. She goes, I don't remember it taking off, but I don't remember it being there either before you came in. She goes, I just remember how it was coming down into their backyard, area, and me screaming at you to get inside and everything, and then it was there for us to see it anymore.
Yeah.
That was shocking, mind blowing, actually, and scary at the same time.
Yeah. But that's a common thing that we hear with these UFOs, where they're moving along real slow like that, and then they're just gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard multiple accounts where people, just like what you're saying, they didn't see it take off real fast. Sometimes you hear that, but a lot of times you also hear where it's not like it just shot off; it was just gone.
Yeah.
So with regards to the UFO and the alien side of things, what do you think they are? Do you think they are from outer space? Do you think they're interdimensional? Do you think they're from in the Earth? Because there's a lot of different theories. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really great question, and this is like something that me and Todd get into with our show as well. Is like you kind of hear something like an inner Earth theory, with what's his name, Admiral Byrd.
Yep.
And talk about the crafts he's seen, and how they warned him about with the nuclear weapons and all that. And I don't think somebody like that would. I mean, come on, they funded more trips for this guy after the fact. With the military at that, after he told that story and what he's seen. So I don't know if it could be something like how they're here, or maybe if it's like something like I think they're from somewhere else. And the reason I go with that is like you go back to the Anunnaki and the ancient Egyptians and things like that, or even the Dogon tribe where they talk about this is where our gods come from and these people, how they have the pyramids set up, align with the stars and talk about, hey, this is where our gods come from. And then you got the Anunnaki, things like that. And I go with more, they come here, they visit us, they probably keep an eye on us. And as crazy as this sound, I'm really getting into this one is, what is the possibility that our moon could be like a type of base?
Yeah.
To where it's easy for them to observe us, from. And just, it's quick. Here, let's go from the moon to Earth and back, almost like a military deployment. Yeah. If they're going to be here on this Earth, because you even hear them talk about, and William Cooper, I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. He, some of the things he talked about, he worked in intelligence and everything like that in a really bad way, what happened to him. But he was gotten big in the conspiracies and things like that, and just the evidence he would show us, come to find out this guy was actually telling us the truth about a lot of things. He talked about how he was seeing them just going crashing into the water and moving through there. Well, that would tear something like any type of plane or something up like that. And we have seen that with airplanes, just ripped to shreds. But how these things could go into the water, and I don't know if there's bases down there. There's so much of our oceans that have not even been explored. We explored more of the space than we have our own oceans.
Yeah. Well, we've got,
now
we've got, Burleson talking about underwater bases. A couple of years ago, I think it was before President Trump began this current term. I believe it was Cash Patel that was speaking and sort of alluding to the fact that there are underwater bases.
Yeah.
And a lot of people see these craft around water, around the oceans. So, yeah, I think that's a very good possibility.
Yeah. To me, I think they're, extraterrestrial in origin. They come from a different star system, things like that,
right.
And they come here to visit. And they've been doing it for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And that's just my feeling on it, my personal thoughts and beliefs. And, I mean, like I said, I could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
But until we're fully told about it, I mean, your theories, everything else of what everybody talks about it or thinks about it, hey, man, I mean, anybody could be right at this point until we're fully disclosed on it. And I don't think we're going to get that full disclosure even to this day. They're going to, like how you talked about the other day, they're going to feed us little tidbits.
Yeah.
But they're not going to give us the full acknowledgement of it,
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't think, could handle that. It would just... What if everybody just...
Yeah, Tim Burchett actually said that very same thing. He said, if the people knew what I have been briefed on, it would just shatter our paradigm. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember his exact words, but basically it was to that effect. We couldn't handle it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, have you heard of his, and hopefully I'm saying this correctly, he was a Canadian defense minister, Paul Hellyer. Hellyer. Sorry about that. Hellye. I'm getting screwed up. Hellyer. Hellyer. Yeah. He's gone on to some like public TV and fully announced, like, what was it, like up to 7 different types of ETs, and even ones that he witnessed himself working on our military bases. Yep. I mean, come on, why would somebody just say that? Look at the advances in technology we've had. Like, I mean, the 1800s, we're still sitting around, riding around on a horse and buggy, that all of a sudden we're going off into space, like in a short amount of time.
Oh, yeah.
We're flying in the sky. We're going into space. We're doing these things. Technology is just advancing so quick.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's a pretty big leap.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that's something that didn't happen for a very long time.
Yeah, because just within the last 100 years, but not even that, within the last 50 to 60 years, technology has advanced so rapidly. It's insane, you know. And we
oh yeah.
Yeah. So with the Bigfoot encounter that you had on that property, you saw the one down there in the creek.
Yep.
That you saw clearly. You saw that other silhouetted figure. You saw the one that kind of ran out across the
back of the property.
The property there. Do you think it was multiples or was it the same creature?
I think it was multiple ones because the one that was standing where I seen the silhouette, it was a lot wider and a lot taller. Yeah. I mean, that's why I think that was the big boy. That was the alpha.
Yeah.
You know, when I caught the movement off to my left by that tree line, I'm thinking it was that little one I seen kind of messing around by the trees and, you know, maybe peeking around, and I caught the movement. So when I went to go look and I started hearing the whistles at me, it was trying to take my focus off that one. Because, the one that was down by the creek, it wasn't as wide or as tall as the silhouette I seen. So I think that was the smaller one that was off to my left, you know, that still doesn't know how to stay covered as better as the one as the big one.
Yeah. Now, did you ever smell anything?
That was one thing I don't ever remember is smelling anything bad.
Yeah.
You know, and the way I like to look at, I don't know if that's maybe a defense mechanism or something like that, like how a skunk would use.
Right.
Or I don't know if you heard of the Miller documents.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the Miller documents talks about that too as like a gland that lets off that secretion and the smell.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's something to deal with mating. Maybe it's something to, you know, is it only the females that do it, or is it male as like kind of a mating scent of, hey, I'm over here? Is it something like a defense mechanism, like how a skunk is, to where it's like, hey, get away from this area, and they let off that putrid. I don't know what it is, but I don't remember smelling that, you know.
Yeah.
And I know I didn't smell anything like that.
I've often wondered that same thing because you hear a lot of people talk about the smell, but then also you hear a lot of people say the same thing you're saying, that they didn't smell anything. So I wonder if it is some sort of defense mechanism or something to do with the mating or something like that. But because I know some people are very adamant that they always have that smell to them.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. You and Todd got your podcast going. You took him out to that property initially, had him go out there with you, check it out, make you feel a little bit better about being out there in the woods. Do you have any ongoing research that you guys are doing?
I just recently moved away 3 hours away from where he lives. We do plan on doing a few things this summer, and it's just, working around his work schedule and doing that. I do want to get down and put out a video at that house and the property I was at so I could show people, like, this is what the area looked like, this is how it came over, this is what happened, and hopefully I could get onto that property, and I'm going to try really hard, but that's going to be a hard thing to do too, because people will be like, no, stay off my property too, and that's going to be the hard one. But I might stand out there by the street and, kind of show something and speak from there. Go out to where Todd had his encounters, and, like I said, that's for his story to tell with you, and I don't want to take anything away from that. What else? So Delta County, where I live at, just moved here. I live in Gladstone, Michigan, Delta County. According to like report sites and things like that, and I got another guy here in Michigan I'm going to be bringing on this show, Val, which we talked to him, on our first podcast, but I'm going to do it the video way with him and talk to him more about his research and everything like that. And this guy, he has this amazing data research that he does for Michigan, and takes in all kinds of reports, things like that. He used to work for a 3-letter agency in local law enforcement and things like that. So this guy's really peculiar about how he keeps things, but it's really great too. I guess I live in the state where it has the most sightings, encounters, and stuff like that. So Tom wants to come up here to this area, and we're going to go venture out. I'm going to be nervous of coming up on the hunting season again because I got used to hunting that private property where nothing ever happened at.
Right.
I really felt great about that. I had no worries about whether it was early in the morning when it's dark outside or leaving when it was dark outside. And I could, that's where deer camps at too. So I could crash on that property and nothing ever worried me about being out there. But now finding new areas where I'm at and just hearing that how big, I want to say how busy with the encounters, experience, and reports are around here, I'm a little nervous about it again.
Oh, sure.
But I'm never going to be one of those people that will ever point my firearm or my bow at them. I carry bear spray. If I felt my life was in so much danger, I am using my bear spray to blind it, to get away.
Yeah.
And that's even if I felt like my life's in danger. I would keep an eye on it, but kind of back away with watching it at the same time. They know what firearms are. If you go to shoot one, it's not the one that you shot or you're shooting at that you're going to be worrying about. It's going to be the one that's off in the bushes that you don't even know that's there.
Yeah.
And I want my body attached, my head attached to my body and my limbs as well, because I don't want to be torn apart. That would be a horrible way to go.
Yeah, it would.
So I'm not going to be one of those people that will go out there and try to take a shot at one. I know they exist. I'm getting better with dealing with the ridicule, things like that. I brush it off now. I know what's out there.
Yeah.
So I don't need confirmation of a body being brought in, things like that. But hopefully one day, I think that's what it's going to take for our government to finally disclose on what's actually out there in these woods.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not going to be me that's going to do it. Now, I'm just fine knowing what I know and try to coincide with them, live with them peacefully,
Yeah.
Just
and that's the thing.
Hopefully I don't come.
I think that I agree with you. I think that in order for them to say yes, they exist, it would take a body. But then, of course, you're still going to have some people that are just going to refuse to believe it. They're going to think that the body is a hoax. They're going to think that, it's still crazy. There's still going to be those people out there.
You're always going to have those non-believers, things like that. It's just but these are also the same people that will live in buildings downtown, things like that, never get out into the woods, venture out there, put in their time out, in the woods. You notice that a lot more, and you don't get that same kind of reaction from people that live in rural areas. They have a lot more caution. But of course, where I live at too, a lot of people up here, they still keep their mouth shut. They're very close, hush hush about it, but they know.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. A lot of people do fear that ridicule that comes with it. But then you have someone like me and Todd. It's no, tell us. We're here to listen. And that's kind of the reason why we did start our show, was to help people. Hey, come talk to us. we're going to give you a safe place to talk about it, and we're going to try to help you in any way possible that we can. You know.
So I got to ask you this. If you will allow me to, not necessarily push back, but just I'm curious on what your perspective is on this, because you keep the Bigfoot separate from the paranormal. You said that you believe it's like a relic comic. And then, of course, there's the idea that there's some kind of paranormal abilities or supernatural abilities or interdimensional or whatever, however people describe it. So what do you think about where people will kind of see them and then it's as if they just disappear in the thin air, or sort of that predator type thing that people sometimes have described? Sometimes people you'll see a trackway and they'll follow it and then it just disappears. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, that's a good question, and I do have some theories about it. And like I said, I mean, I could be absolutely wrong. When it comes to things like that, like, oh, it was there, and I look back and it was gone. Have you ever heard people talk about how they actually seen these things crawl on all fours?
Oh yeah.
And it's almost like a spider crawl looking weird thing like that.
Creepy shit.
Yeah. I believe that they get down low and they could get out of there, you know, under the bushes, like to keep that like low enough to where they could get out, you know, to have the bushes blocking their escape, things like that. When it comes to things like, you know, all of a sudden the tracks vanish. Well, here's something to think about. Were there trees in the area? You know, possibly, hey, do a pull up, get up in a tree. Not very many people look up in trees. When you're walking around in the woods, where are you mostly focused at? Yep. Looking what's in front of you or what's on the ground. You're never really looking up. And come to find out, a lot of people are starting to report these things up in trees. So I'm wondering, either can they possibly pull themselves up in a tree? Now, if it goes out into an area where there are no trees, and people have talked about this, this is a well-known thing too. People backtrack in through their own steps and go back out the same way. Could it be doing something like that? And that's how I kind of like to leave things at. Sorry, I'm plugging my computer.
Yeah, because I know. Talking about the trees, looking up in the trees and stuff. You know, when I'm out there in the swamps, I'm looking. You're from Florida. I mean, you grew up on the East Coast, but in the swamps around here, man, especially this time of year, you got to be looking at the ground because there's stuff down there that'll kill you.
Oh yeah,
but all the
snakes and everything,
all
man.
the cottonmouths and the rattlesnakes and stuff we've got out here. But yeah, I look up in the trees too because you hear people talk about it. And I tell you what, I don't want to be walking through there and this thing just dropped down out of the tree in front of me.
Yeah, in Florida, they got big enough trees for things to climb up around in too. Yeah. Like the trees up here are a lot different, but like in the UP, but trees are different also down in the lower part of Michigan too. Yeah. But there are some trees where they could get up in them up here as well. Me and Todd really started exploring into that idea. And like I mentioned, like, you know, even the Native Americans, when they would hunt or stalk, they would go back through their own tracks to get back out and make it look like, poof, it's like you're vanished out of thin air. That's just my personal thoughts on that, plus the getting down low to the ground and crawling out of there without being seen. Yeah. And these things, they could be quiet if they really want to. I mean, I don't know if you hunt, but I've had deer show up out of nowhere and you never even heard them step on any dead leaves when the ground is riddled with them. But you can have something like a squirrel sound like something running in too.
Oh, yeah.
But a deer, absolutely silent, almost like a ninja.
The raccoons,
you
man.
know,
The raccoons sometimes sound like a truck running through the woods, man.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of times, like with bears up here, if I encounter them, you know, they run off. You just yell at them real quick. You know, I'm not scared of them. And of course, you might get that one that might be a little ornery or something and stand its ground, but I haven't encountered that one yet. But those things, they run off. But for some reason, these Sasquatches, they really they like to observe things and watch, and they're very sneaky about it. Their whole mind process and the way they think and act or go about things is this is why I go with the relic hominid. Not only because that's what it looked like to me, you know, it looked more like a relic hominid than an ape, but just the way they act, they hunt, how they think, and how they do things. You know, that it's just something more than what an ape does. And I'm not calling like chimpanzees or anything like that stupid either, because you could teach these things a lot, you know, and how to use certain tools and things like that, you know, but we're not teaching these things any of that. These like chimpanzees or gorillas, they have to be taught that, you know, and that takes some time. You know, at one point, you know, the Native Americans talked about they were trading with these things and living side by side, but something happened to where that trust or something got broken because now they were taking away women and children. I think maybe that's what happened. You get a few rogue ones in there. Just like when you have good people, like me or you, you know, you also got bad people out there that just do terrible things. And I think that's what maybe happens with some of these ones out there. You'll encounter a lot of good ones where nothing will happen, but you might have like that rogue male or something like that might just snatch somebody up, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely think they are. There's a variety out there, just like humans. You know, I mean, we see it in their size, their color, some of the features, depending on where you're at, what region you're in. People will describe some different features. You know, so I think they're very much like us, and they're super intelligent.
Yeah. Oh, they're smart. They're fast and they're strong, you know, so yeah, man, it's incredible how fast they could be. You know, just how it was there and it went back into the cattails and by that swampy area and stayed hidden was just amazing. And it knew how to hide from me. You know, it knew when I turned my flashlight on, it would stop. You know, and it would just stay hidden. You know, so very smart.
Well, before we wrap it up, I got a couple of fun questions for you.
All right.
So first of all, besides Bigfoot, what is your favorite cryptid?
My favorite cryptid. I'm starting to look into the Dogman thing because that's huge up here in Michigan. I was on the fence about it. But now, since how I was telling you, I was looking at it in a different way of what if take a chimpanzee and take a baboon. We know they're both a type of ape, but they look totally different in the face. You know, so, I mean, maybe something like a Sasquatch is something like how a chimp is with the face or like us. But then you have, you know, the Dogman, you know, where it has more of a protruded snout, the bigger canine fangs, the ears that pop up on the side of the head. When you first see something like that, maybe your brain is going, oh, okay, this looks like a canine, you know? So I'm really starting to look in things with Dogman. Me and Todd, we kind of want to go down to the Manistee National Forest, where these things are really known at, and that's in the lower northern part of Michigan. So we want to go down there and investigate around. Ah, man. Last time I ever said something did not exist, fate kicked me right in my butt and said, oh yeah, well, watch this. If I have an encounter with something like that, I do not want it to be on my own while I'm out in my tree climber up in a tree, and all of a sudden this thing's like looking right at me with that menacing grin people always talk about. You know, I kind of wanted to, hey, if I was in my vehicle or something like that and I happened to see it or something like that, that's how I want it to happen. And that's if it ever did. And I'm never going to, you know, I don't think it ever will. But I also like the smaller ones too. Like you get into the Moon-Eyed People and Puckwudgies and, you know, the little cryptids like that. Like that, they really fascinate me. So you got the Bigfoot, Dogman, and those ones. Those are like my top three. Yeah. Getting into water cryptids, things like that. At one point, we do know what are they, like a plesiosaur or something like that. We do know they existed. You know, they absolutely did exist. I don't think, you know, they do anymore. I could be wrong. Maybe out in the ocean it could, or something like that. That's just my personal thoughts, but I love talking about them. Yeah. There's other cryptids that I don't really necessarily believe in, but it's a fun topic to discuss, you know. So.
All right. What's your favorite conspiracy theory?
Oh man, I love getting into like the Project Blue Book, Majestic 12, things like that. What things that happened to like Phil Snyder and Paul Benowitz and William Cooper, all the way up to now. With these scientists and things like that. That's what I really like getting into. And then looking at other government projects like Blue Beam and things like that. You know, the MK Ultra. That's a real messed up one. They were even doing it to kids.
Yeah, man.
You know, and to the public without their knowledge. So I really love getting into that.
I think they're still doing it now.
Oh yeah, I just think it's just something like Majestic 12 is just underneath a different name now. Maybe it's not called Majestic 12; it's called something totally different, what we never know about. But
I agree. Well, Adam, tell everybody where they can find your podcast, and go ahead and plug that a little bit for us.
We just we're moving away from like the Spotify, the platforms like that. We're getting into the video part. So now we're on YouTube. So if you just go into the search bar and type up Entering the Unknown Podcast, our little logo will pop up. You'll see like a Bigfoot guy. Well, I got to get my hat updated. See the little guy in the middle? Yeah, I'll say Entering the Unknown, have a little UFO over him and a Bigfoot on one side, Dogman Tree Peaking on the other. So I changed that up around. So if you see that on YouTube, it's, I believe our handle is Entering the Unknown, you know, with a little dash, Z3M or something like that. I can't fully remember, but just type in Entering the Unknown Podcast. You'll see our profile pic, pop up. We're on TikTok as well. You know, so if you probably type in the same thing like that, I'm not fully, because I just recently got onto TikTok.
I'll put some links down in the description too.
Hitting that one up as well.
That way,
so just type in the same thing. You'll see our same profile picture pop up. We're on there as well.
Yeah. You feel that? Static in the silence, something in the sound, whispers in the dark when the sun goes down. Shadows got a story, but they don't speak loud. You gotta lean in close when the night rolls round. Cold wind, back road, nowhere to hide. Truce in the space between truth and lie. Welcome to the lowdown, don't make a sound where the lost get found and the strange comes out. If you're looking for answers, you won't find them here. Just a trail of clues and a little more.